Microsoft spent nearly $69 billion buying Activision Blizzard King, the biggest acquisition the games industry has ever seen. It was supposed to transform Xbox. Call of Duty would supercharge Game Pass. King would finally give Microsoft a serious mobile business, and franchises like Warcraft, Diablo and Overwatch would turn Xbox into the most powerful publisher in gaming. Now, less than 3 years after the deal closed, Xbox has admitted that its business is not healthy. Thousands of jobs are being cut, Game Pass has abandoned day one Call of Duty releases, and the new head of Xbox could not even give a straight yes when she was asked whether the Activision deal had paid off. And yet, in the middle of all that chaos, Blizzard has reportedly just become the best performing studio inside Xbox. So what the hell is actually going on here? Was Activision Blizzard a disastrous waste of money, or is it now the one part of Xbox holding the entire operation together? The honest answer is somehow it might be both. To understand the current situation, we need to separate two questions. Did Microsoft buy valuable companies? Absolutely. Did buying them fix Xbox and deliver the strategy Microsoft promised? That answer is far less flattering, because Activision Blizzard King is not one business. Activision gives Microsoft Call of Duty, one of the most reliable premium franchises in entertainment. Blizzard gives it World of Warcraft, Diablo and Overwatch, games capable of keeping communities engaged for years, and King gives it Candy Crush, and a huge mobile audience that traditional console publishers struggle to reach. Microsoft was not merely buying a few games, it was buying premium sales, subscriptions, microtransactions, mobile reach, and some of the most recognizable intellectual property in the world. The problem is that Microsoft did not spend $69 billion merely to own a profitable publisher. It sold this deal as the engine of a much bigger transformation. When Microsoft announced the acquisition in 2022, it explicitly talked about accelerating its gaming business across mobile, PC, console and cloud. It also said Activision Blizzard's games would strengthen Game Pass. That was the dream. Put enormous releases into the subscription, attract millions of new members, and make Xbox bigger than the plastic box underneath your television. For a while, it genuinely looked as though the plan might work. Black Ops 6 launched directly into Game Pass, and Microsoft called it the biggest Call of Duty launch ever. It set records for day one players and day one Game Pass subscriber additions, while sales on PlayStation and Steam were also up. By the end of Microsoft's 2025 financial year, Game Pass was reportedly bringing in nearly $5 billion annually. The strategy was not completely delusional. Microsoft could collect full price sales on rival platforms while using Game Pass to strengthen its own ecosystem, but one spectacular launch is not a sustainable business model, and the cracks soon become impossible to ignore. In April 2026, Xbox cut the price of Game Pass Ultimate in the United States from $29.99 to $22.99. More importantly, it announced that future Call of Duty games would no longer enter the service on release day. Instead, they would arrive roughly a year later. That is not a small adjustment, it is direct reversal of the idea that made the Activision acquisition so exciting to many Xbox players in the first place. Call of Duty is one of the few games that can still sell millions of full-price copies every single year. Putting it immediately into a subscription only makes sense if the new subscribers, the retained members, and the extra spending they generate are worth more than the sales you sacrifice. If that equation stops working, Microsoft is using its most valuable annual release to subsidize a service that is not growing quickly enough. The problem for consumers is that Microsoft spent years training people to see day one first-party games as a defining promise of Game Pass. Call of Duty was meant to be the ultimate proof of that promise. Pulling it out tells us that even the biggest franchise Microsoft could possibly buy was not enough to make the original subscription model work on the terms Xbox wanted. So the acquisition delivered Call of Duty to Microsoft, but Call of Duty did not deliver the Game Pass revolution Microsoft expected. Then came Xbox's 2026 reset. In an unusually blunt internal message published by Xbox itself, new CEO Asha Sharma said the business was not healthy. She said Game Pass, multi-platform publishing, and the expanded studio portfolio had all created value, but had not grown at the expected pace. Xbox announced plans to eliminate roughly 3,200 roles across the 2027 financial year, with around 1,600 going immediately. 4 studios were also moved out of Microsoft's ownership, while cuts extended across Activision, Blizzard, King, Bethesda, Mojang, and Xbox Game Studios. Acquisitions are sold using the language of growth, more resources, greater stability, and bigger opportunities. Once the deal closes, the pressure changes. Microsoft has to justify the price it paid, and $69 billion creates one hell of an expectation. Activision Blizzard cannot merely perform well, it has to justify an enormous valuation inside an already complicated Xbox organization. That is why the new leadership's answer has been so revealing. When Sharma was asked in June whether the acquisition was paying off, she praised Call of Duty, Candy Crush and World of Warcraft, but stopped short of saying yes. Her argument was essentially that these are incredible assets bought under a different strategy, in a different market, at a very different moment. In corporate language, that is about as close as you get to admitting the original mass no longer looks convincing. And now we arrive at the most interesting twist. According to internal emails reported and verified by Windows Central, Blizzard finished Microsoft's 2026 financial year as the top performing studio in Xbox's Studios division. Blizzard reportedly recorded its third highest year for revenue, while 2025 and 2026 became its first back-to-back years of growth since 2017. Diablo 4 and its Lord of Hatred expansion were highlighted as major drivers, while Overwatch reportedly delivered its strongest quarter since 2022. We should be precise here. This report is about Blizzard, not the whole Activision Blizzard King group. It does not magically prove that every part of the acquisition is thriving, and it certainly does not prove that Microsoft has already earned back $69 billion, but it does suggest that companies Microsoft bought were not the fundamental problem. Blizzard can still command enormous audiences when its teams receive clear direction, consistent support, and room to respond to their communities. Blizzard's success may tell Microsoft how to manage the rest of its portfolio, give strong studios a clear identity, and judge each business by what it is actually good at. World of Warcraft does not need to sell Xbox consoles to be valuable. Candy Crush does not need to turn mobile players into Game Pass subscribers. Call of Duty does not need to sacrifice a mountain of premium sales just to prove that subscriptions are the future. This is why calling the acquisition either a total success or a total failure misses the point. As a purchase of content and intellectual property, it has obvious value. Microsoft now owns franchises other companies would do almost anything to possess. Black Ops 6 produced historic engagement. Game Pass reached record revenue. Blizzard is reportedly growing again, and King gives Xbox a mobile presence it could never build on its own. But as a strategy for fixing Xbox, the deal has clearly fallen short of the original promise. Console sales continued to weaken. Xbox content and services revenue fell 10% in Microsoft's latest reported quarter. Xbox Game Pass became too expensive, then had its price cut. Day One Call of Duty was introduced as a landmark benefit, then removed, and Microsoft is cutting thousands of gaming jobs while admitting its enormous portfolio became overextended. The acquisition gave Xbox revenue, reach, and relevance. What it did not give Xbox was coherence. Microsoft still had to decide whether Xbox is primarily a console platform, a subscription service, a multi-platform publisher, a cloud ecosystem, or simply the corporate roof above a collection of giant entertainment brands. It can participate in all of those areas, but it cannot keep changing which one takes priority every 18 months and expect its studios or its customers to follow without consequence. The next phase is going to show whether Microsoft has learned the right lesson. The optimistic outcome is that Microsoft protects what is working. Blizzard receives investments and creative independence. Activision gets the structure needed to make Call of Duty feel essential rather than merely annual. King remains a powerful mobile business. Microsoft accepts that these franchises can strengthen the company without all performing the same job. The darker outcome is that Microsoft treats these businesses only as a way to repair Xbox's margins. Successful teams must produce more with fewer people. Dependable franchises carry even more pressure, and smaller ideas are pushed aside. That would be the real tragedy of this acquisition. Not that Microsoft bought bad studios, but that the price of buying them creates demands capable of making those studios worse. So where does the Xbox and Activision Blizzard situation stand right now? The assets are strong. The original strategy is not. Blizzard becoming Xbox's reported top performing studio is a genuine success, and the people responsible deserve credit for it. But it also exposes the wider contradiction. Individual studios are finding momentum while the organization above them is shrinking, restructuring and reconsidering the very plan that justified buying them. Microsoft may eventually make the acquisition look financially sensible. These franchises are valuable enough, and their lives are long enough that judging the entire deal after less than 3 years would be premature. But Microsoft did not buy a shortcut to winning gaming. It bought responsibility for some of the most important worlds in gaming. And the question is no longer whether Activision Blizzard can save Xbox. The question is whether Xbox can stop changing direction long enough to let Activision Blizzard succeed.